Jason, how has your summer been? And also, what has brought you here to One Jets Drive?
Had a great summer. Have spent some time up in Nantucket, so we enjoy that. Get ourselves out of the Texas heat. But then I've been on a little bit of a training camp tour. I was in Baltimore yesterday, and I'm headed to Kansas City and Denver and University of Oklahoma. I'm going to go to Notre Dame, and then I'm going to go to Philly, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo next week. So getting ready for the season. The season's almost upon us. And just really fun being here, seeing the Jets practice today.
You just spoke to Aaron Rodgers. You're working on a pretty cool project. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, we're working on a project with NFL Films about the evolution of throwing a football. And it all started because of a conversation I had with Aaron a couple of years ago when he was in Green Bay. And I just asked him, give me a thought on throwing, because he's one of the great throwers of his generation and maybe of all time. And he stands up and says, you know, all I think about is getting the weight to the inside of my left ankle, the inside of my left calf, and the inside of my left knee. And I was like, what? You know, and so we talked about it further and just kind of dug into it. And as I left the conversation, I said to myself, I've been thinking about throwing a football my whole life, talked to everybody about it, and I've never heard anybody talk about it that way. And I was thinking about this famous New York Jet Joe Namath poster I used to have. It had the throwing sequence of Namath throwing a football. There's 8 pictures, and it's the classic Namath release with a little paragraph description in front of each of these pictures about, you know, what he's thinking about, the weight transfer, the arm angle, all of those things. And I used to have that on my wall growing up, and I said, you know, boy, have things changed from the early 70s with Namath and now to Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the best throwers of their generations,
right,
but doing it completely differently. So we got with NFL Films, and we've kind of dived into this topic, and we've talked to a lot of different guys. Talked to Drew Brees and Dak Prescott and Troy Aikman and Kurt Warner and Norv Turner and Tom House, and now we talked to Aaron, and just excited to put this all together and kind of see how the whole thing has evolved. And spent a lot of time with each of these guys, and they had so many great insights. So excited about this.
This is so interesting. What stands out to you about the way Aaron throws a football?
Oh, I was on the other side of it a lot as a coach in Dallas, and we had some great battles with them, but he always played so well and played so well in the big moments. And anybody who watches it says he just has this unique way of throwing the ball, and he throws it like a tennis ball. And I was in Miami. It was my first job as a coach. I was the quarterback coach for Nick Saban in 2005.
Wow.
I just retired, and Aaron and Alex Smith were coming out in that draft, and we had the second pick of the draft. And we chose not to take Aaron Rodgers. And about 5 MVPs later and a Hall of Fame career. But he's just an amazing player, first and foremost. And the way he throws the ball, I think, is unique and as good as anybody who's ever played. So to hear him talk about that, the things he thinks about, the things that are important to him as a passer, it's really fun.
What is important to him as a passer? Because people would make the argument, there's many people would make the argument that nobody's thrown the football better in the history of our league than him.
Well, I think he's a really talented guy, but he's a really thoughtful guy, and I think he's had a very natural motion throughout his life. He talked about watching Joe Montana as a kid, and then going out in the yard and throwing with his brother and his dad, and having some of those incredible role models when he was young. But then, you know, he goes to Cal and plays for Jeff Tedford, and Jeff Tedford molded a lot of great quarterbacks, but he has his quarterbacks hold the ball up really high. And so when you watched Aaron Rodgers on film in college, that's what you saw. And you said, okay, is he a natural passer? What is it? He looks a little awkward here. And so you have to kind of look beyond that and say, okay, if he carried it in a more traditional way, do you like how he throws the ball? And it's hard to say that you don't. Then he goes to Green Bay and sits for a while and watches Brett Favre. And he was so great in our conversation today, talking about how much he benefited from just watching Favre and how he threw the ball from so many different body angles and arm angles and what he learned from that. And then obviously adopted some of that in his career and has been one of the best over the last 20 years in the NFL. So I just think he's really natural throwing the ball, but I think he's really thoughtful too. And I think he's refined his throwing motion. And the other part of it is he's such a smart player and sees the game and understands the game and gets his team in a great position. So I think he provides himself a really good platform for success, understanding what his offense is doing, understanding what the defense is trying to take away, understanding what the weaknesses are. I think that's a huge part of his game as well.
He can make any throw on the field, but the one stat that stands out to me maybe above the rest, that has the number 1 touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history. And you watch him out here in the practice field, he does not turn the ball over.
Yeah, he's incredibly smart, his understanding of the game, but then he's an outstanding decision maker. And then he can throw the ball where he wants to throw it. So he keeps it away from the defense. Great back shoulder today in practice to Garrett Wilson on the right sideline there against Sauce. And, the ball's boom. It's right there. It's away from Sauce, only where Garrett can make the play. So he has a unique arm talent. You go with just him being smart, him being a great decision maker, him understanding the game and how each play fits into the game, and then keeping the ball out of harm's way while he makes plays. It's unique. It's rare.
Is he naturally patient? Because another thing that stands out to me, when the offense has the ball, he's had a lot of long drives in this move the ball periods where they're always getting positive yards. He seemingly never is at a disadvantage when he's operating the controls.
Again, I think it goes back to his understanding of the game, first and foremost. He understands the play versus the defense. And when he has an opportunity to go take a shot down the field, nobody does it better. But when he doesn't, he quickly checks the ball down and keeps the ball moving. He keeps himself and his team out of harm's way. And, he probably learned that early on. I thought Favre always did a good job of that, where he would take the check down, and then take the shot. But in comparison, Favre was probably too aggressive at times. Yeah. And Aaron seems to be able to do the same thing and, again, stay away from turning the ball over. And that's what gives your team a chance to win. When you throw 4 times as many touchdowns as you do interceptions over the course of your career, you're going to have a lot of success.
What do all the great ones have in common? Because you've spoken to a lot of them. You played behind one of them. You just mentioned Troy Aikman before. What do the great quarterbacks in this league have in common?
Oh, I think there's so much that goes into it. For me, more than anything else, it starts inside of them. I think they're all driven to be the best, and everything they do in their life is geared towards them being the best. And the elite ones, it's not only for them to be their best, it's for the team to be their best. They're making everybody else around them better. And it's their work ethic, it's their example, it's their attention to detail, it's their striving for excellence, all of those things that the elite people in all walks of life do. And then when you start talking about the more specific stuff about the quarterback position, I always said that line 1 with quarterback is instinct. Quarterbacks come in all shapes and sizes. The one thing that all the great quarterbacks have is they have an instinct and a feel for the game. My dad, who was a scout and a coach for a long time, used to say, aptitude to play. They understand how to play. When you watch Aaron Rodgers out there playing football, he understands how to play. And I think all the great ones in all the sports, regardless of what your position is, they have that. They have that feel and that instinct. And a lot of it comes from playing a lot.
Yeah.
From guys who grew up playing in the street and grew up playing on the playground, and they would go down in there and play pickup basketball and stickball and all of that. They're just instinctive athletes. They see things, they feel things. So I think the best quarterbacks for me have that. I think they're smart, they're tough, they're accurate, they're great decision makers. All of those things are the qualities that you're looking for in guys. And then whatever their athletic ability is, their ability to move their feet, make plays with their feet, their arm talent, that's what takes them to that next level. And in many cases, gives the guys the opportunity to win championships and wear gold jackets.
You're a guy who attended Princeton. You played quarterback in the NFL. When you have these conversations with Aaron, are you super impressed by his intelligence, the knowledge, and also the memory, the recall that he has. It's like a photogenic memory where he can say something that happened in 2012, and you'll ask him, hey, remember that in the third quarter and what blitz they were throwing at you? And he'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes to him being a smart person, a smart player, and also someone who cares. You know, he's invested in this, and so he knows about his technique. He's thought about his technique. He talked about how he used to throw a certain way, and then he started to evolve because he had some injuries. And then it was like, okay, let me think about what this is that I'm doing so I can first and foremost replicate it and then express it to other people. And that's what he's been able to do. And he was so good on that documentary that we're doing, talking about not only his throwing motion, but the influences on him and then maybe the influences he's had on others. And it's really a fun listen.
How different is it now when you see a quarterback who's trying to do what he's doing at 40, maybe compared to a couple decades when you and Troy and the boys were going at it for the Cowboys, as far as the advances that we have medically and also what these guys are doing with their bodies now?
Well, of all the incredible contributions that Tom Brady has made to the game of football, I think the fact that he played till he was 45 and played at such a high level, for me, ranks way up there. It's 22 years of excellence. And he showed people that if you approach it the right way, you can keep going, you can keep playing. And he made an incredible commitment to do that. And I think some other guys, Aaron being one of them, started saying, hey, what an amazing example that is to be able to do that, sustain that excellence for so long. I want a part of that, right? And everyone starts taking care of their body more, and they start doing all the things they need to do to stay healthy for a longer period of time. Now, we have to be honest, the rules for quarterbacks have changed.
Yes.
Right? The quarterbacks back in the day were getting hit.
Yeah.
Getting hit a lot. And, the NFL's always been protective of quarterbacks, but very different now than it was even 10 or 15 years ago. So the guys that played back in the 80s and the 90s, those guys got hit a lot more, and that takes its toll over time.
Yeah.
So I think the rules changes have contributed to it, but there's no doubt the nutrition and all the attention that guys are giving to their bodies now has allowed them to have longer careers and play the game at a high level for a longer period of time.
You know this better than anybody. The season is an incredible journey. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. But when you look at this Jets team, who's been very solid to elite on the defensive side of the ball with good special teams, what's the potential of this group if this offense takes the next step and we see Aaron Rodgers out there on the field for 17 games?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Jets, and I think they've done a good job bringing in cornerstone players throughout their team, guys who are outstanding players, but they're also outstanding people and great examples to their teammates. The guys that you want to build the whole franchise around. And they have them on defense. They have them on the offensive side of the ball. I think they've done a good job bolstering the offensive line with some veteran players. Tyron Smith playing left tackle, a guy I know very well. We drafted him in Dallas. He was our first draft pick when I became the head coach, and he's been one of those guys for that franchise forever. And the Jets recognize that. You bring him in there, you put him at that really critical position. Morgan Moses on the other side, Simpson. You got some young guys inside. I think they have a chance on offense to be significantly better than they've been, not only because Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback, but because they bolstered the offensive line. There's talent in the backfield. There's talent outside. So I think there's going to be a comfort level that they have because they're going to be more physical up front, and they're going to control the line of scrimmage more, and they're going to have Aaron Rodgers, a veteran quarterback, running the show for him. And I think that's going to make everybody around him better.
What's it like having Tyron Smith on your team, knowing that he's going to protect your quarterback's blind side each week?
Yeah, Tyron had some injuries throughout his career, and I think, our record when he was playing versus when he was not playing was significantly different.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys, and like I said, he was the first player we took when I became the head coach because I believe he represented everything we wanted our program to be. And he was that for 13 years down there in Dallas. And he's an outstanding player. When you watched him on tape in college, in the run game, he'd get his hands on guys and just block them. And block them.
Yeah.
And block them to the end of the down and block them into the Gatorade jug on the sidelines. And then, as a pass protector, it was the same thing. He'd get his hands inside and grab those guys, and they couldn't move. And when you look at a player, sometimes you have to just forget everything you know about football and just watch it. I used to always say that, people use the word identity a lot. Identity is the most expert person and the least expert person in the field watching something and drawing the same conclusion.
Seeing the same thing.
Right? And so with Tyron, it was like you didn't have to know anything about football. You say, okay, your goal is to make sure the guy that you're blocking doesn't get to the quarterback or to the running back. Well, he seems to do that on every play.
Yeah.
He just blocks his guy and keeps blocking him. And that's what he's done for Dallas for a long time. And I think he's a great addition to the Jets.
Do you think he's a surefire Hall of Famer? Not to put you on the spot, but you're talking about an 8-time Pro Bowler, a 5-time,
Tyron
first
Smith,
and second team.
I mean, to me, he's a first ballot Hall of
All-Pro.
Famer. Yeah, he's the best left tackle of his generation. He and Trent Williams are the two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're slam dunk guys. I was fortunate to play with Larry Allen, who's I think arguably the best offensive lineman, certainly the best I've been around, and arguably the best ever. Tyron Smith is in that category for me.
Is this kind of a cool situation for a young offensive lineman like Olu Fashanu, who's drafted number 11 overall? He comes in, and you do have Tyron, and you have Morgan Moses on the opposite side, both 33 years old. But when you're talking about best left tackles over the last 25 years, you're looking at the guy right in front of you.
No doubt. And, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers being a young quarterback in Green Bay, being influenced by Brett Favre.
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's one of the great dynamics in the NFL. When young players come in and they see a veteran guy who's a pro, who knows how to do it, who does things the right way, day in and day out, plays the right way, takes care of his body, is a great teammate, is a great leader, it's amazing the impact that can have on someone's career. And you as a coach can preach all those same things. But when the player sees the player, like this guy's been to 8 Pro Bowls, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame, and this is what he does,
right?
I'm going to make sure I do that.
Yeah.
Because I want to have that same kind of success. And we had a lot of those guys in Dallas. Tyron was one of them, Zach Martin, Travis Frederick on the offensive line. We had Jason Witten, Sean Lee. We had all these different guys that you would say as a coach, just watch number 82, watch 77. And the young guys, they gravitate towards them. They follow that example, and all of a sudden they're on the right path.
How about the young playmakers that Aaron has around him right now? Starting in the backfield with Breece Hall. There's a couple of rookie running backs who've impressed early on, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. But Garrett Wilson looks like he's just ready to go in a different stratosphere right now. And so we'll start with Breece and Garrett.
Yeah, again, we talked about cornerstone players, and when I said guy in the backfield, we're talking about Breece Hall, we're talking about the guy outside, talking about Garrett Wilson, and those are the guys you're talking about. And when you think about them and Sauce and Queenan and all these different guys, it's like, you got to be kidding me. It's a really good football team. And those young guys will benefit from being around Aaron Rodgers. They'll benefit from being around Tyron Smith, these veteran players who know how to do it, who are pros. And there's so much juice that Breece brings and Garrett brings to this team. And they're going to be featured players, and pretty confident that the coaches will do a good job putting them in position to have opportunities, and pretty confident that Aaron will do the same thing. And they're going to be the go-to guys for the Jets offense, and I'm betting on them, not against them.
You know America's team better than anybody. But with that being said, what do you make of the Jets' schedule this year? And obviously you're working Sunday Night Football, but as far as having the 7 standalone games over their first 11.
Well, it's something that in Dallas we had a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes way back to the 70s when Roger Staubach and Tom Landry were running the show. But that franchise has been in those situations for a long time, and I was there as a player, and I was there as an assistant coach and as a head coach, and I always just felt like you embrace it.
Yeah.
You embrace those opportunities. You don't shy away from them. This is why you do this. And so for the Jets, the challenge will be sometimes the weekly schedule gets tough. You're playing at night. You're playing on Monday. You have early game. You have very few early games. You have a lot of night games and later games. But you just figure it out, and you embrace those opportunities, and you make the adjustments with the schedules the way you need to. But to me, it's a fun year to be a part of the Jets.
You played the game. You were an OC. You were a head coach. We just talked about it. If you have a game and the Jets are in your schedule, and you're facing that defense, and you look across from here, and there's Quinnen Williams, and there's Jermaine Johnson, and there's C.J. Mosley, and there's Quincy Williams, and there's Sauce Gardner, and D.J. Reed, Michael Carter. Where are you attacking? What are you trying to do?
Well, I don't see a lot of weaknesses. They're really good on all three levels. They're really good defending the run. They can rush the passer. They can cover on the back end. They can create turnovers. They're fundamentally sound. They don't give you a lot of big plays. So it's an excellent defense. I do think what you need to do when you play teams like this is you have to emphasize the importance of being patient. And then you have to emphasize the importance of when we get our opportunity, we have to cash in on it.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready. We're going to get one shot here to throw this one-on-one back shoulder fade like Aaron had today in practice.
Yeah.
We got to make it. We got to make the throw. We got to make the competitive, tough catch against Sauce Gardner. So that's really what you're preaching. They're going to make you work for it, so let's work for it. We got to make some short third downs. We're going to get ourselves into third manageable. We're going to get some shots on early downs to make some plays down the field. We got to cash in on them because they're not going to give us anything. And if you preach that to them and get them ready for that, hopefully they'll have the mindset and mentality to go execute for 60 minutes because that's what they're going to make you do.
How difficult is that in today's game for maybe a young quarterback when you say, okay, you are facing the Jets, but you can't force it? Because there's always the thought when I'm watching the Jets defenses, that quarterback's going to get impatient. And when he gets impatient, then he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And again, we were talking earlier about Aaron with decision-making. How does this play fit into the game, right? There's a lot of plays in the game. Typically 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 series in the game. Each play impacts the outcome of that series. So you have to stay locked in, and you have to understand, again, when you have an opportunity, hey, we're not backing off. We're going to take advantage. We're getting after these guys. But then when they take something away, find the back, move on, right? If you're the runner, put your foot in the ground and make 2 more yards going north and south. It's not a real sexy run, but that's going to get us to third and manageable. Those kinds of things matter when you play against really good defenses.
As an analyst, are you looking forward to actually seeing what this Jets defense looks like if they do have a lead in the second half? Because we haven't had an opportunity to see that too much. Now you insert Rodgers into the equation. You have some of these young guns offensively. You would figure the Jets are going to be scoring more points, and maybe this defense is actually going to be operating with a lead in the second half.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And obviously, when you are ahead and teams are more inclined to throw the ball to get back into the game, you're allowing your defensive linemen to pin their ears back. You're allowing your DBs. There's going to be a lot of tips and overthrows because it's going to be an uncomfortable environment for the quarterback to throw in. So you can start taking advantage of those situations and play from ahead and force some turnovers and really get after them. And it's hard to do that week in and week out in the NFL, but I do think the Jets have some capability on both sides of the ball to let them play some of those games.
You talk about every team, but just from a 30,000-foot view right now here in August, what do you make of the AFC East?
Oh, I think it'll be interesting. I've been a Buffalo Bill fan for a long time. I think they're a good team. I love their coach and what he's done there. All he's done is have success.
Yeah.
Now, they haven't broken through, gone to the next thing. I get that. I understand that. But it's hard to win the division. It's hard to win that first round of the playoffs. It's hard to get to that divisional. It's hard to do these things. And they've done that on a pretty consistent basis. I love their quarterback. They're going through some changes as well. No more Diggs. They're going to have some young weapons on the offensive side of the ball. So we're going to have to find out about them. But I think they're a good team. New England certainly in transition now. Coach Belichick, the job he did there for so long, no longer there. Finding out what their quarterback situation is going to be all about. I do think they'll still be solid on defense. They've put a lot of resources to that defense
Yeah.
in recent years. But the question marks, Gerard Mayo getting his first opportunity, how they're going to be on offense, who they're going to play at quarterback. There's a lot of question marks there. And it'll be fun to see how that all plays out. Miami is interesting to me if you think about, the kind of offense they had for a lot of last year. I mean, it's one of the best offenses the league has seen in the last 20 years. They scored 70 points in a game. I mean, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
And they have so much speed. They know how to use it, and they can be really dangerous. You think about three legit, incredibly fast running backs, the wide receivers, the tight end. Everybody can run, and Tua at the controls. They can be really impressive. They have to prove that they can go win tough games.
Yeah.
They have to be able to go on the road and win late in their division in bad weather. And can they do that? Can they win different kinds of games when the speed element gets neutralized a little bit by a defense or by conditions? Can they put it into another gear and run the ball a little bit more and play a lower scoring game and win? I think that's what championship teams do. So I think that's their next step.
How about the AFC overall from a quarterback perspective? Mahomes is going for his third consecutive championship. Crazy to talk about. You have a Herbert now pairing him up with Harbaugh. Then you go to the AFC South. You got Anthony Richardson. You have C.J. Stroud, who took the league by storm. You got Trevor Lawrence in comeback mode. Then we go to the AFC North, and you talk about Joe Burrow coming back. You got Lamar Jackson, a two-time NFL MVP. Pittsburgh, it looks like they're going to be rolling with Russell Wilson. We'll have to see actually how that unfolds. Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, he's got a very talented roster around him. You talked about Buffalo, how you're a fan of Josh Allen, of course, and Tua's got so many weapons there, and Aaron Rodgers coming back healthy. What do you make of all these quarterbacks?
There's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the AFC. There really are, and they're young guys coming into their prime. I mean, these guys have been good players throughout their career, but we talked about before with Brady. Brady plays till he's 45 and continues to get better and better and better. And a lot of these guys, seems to me have that same kind of passion, that drive to be great. And I think they'll continue to improve. Kansas City for me, pretty remarkable, what they've done over the last 4 or 5 years with Mahomes as their quarterback and obviously Andy as their coach. They were so impressive last year because they kind of flopped around on offense for most of the year. They flopped around even till the end of the season. But I was able to do the first playoff game against Miami, the really cold game in Kansas City. It was -9, fourth coldest game in the history of the NFL. And I watched practice the day before, and I just kind of said to myself, they're going to hand the ball to Pacheco. They're going to throw the ball to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, and everybody else is going to be kind of secondary. And it was freezing. It was -9. I thought my ears were going to fall off. And Mahomes went out there like it was a spring day.
Yeah.
And they were chunking it down the field right from the start, and they played in such a decisive way. It's almost like you saw that they got together and said, who are the guys we can count on? Who are the guys on offense who want to get the ball in their hands on a consistent basis and make these guys our primary focus? And that's what they did. They handed it to Pacheco. They were physical in the run game. They threw it to Kelce. They threw it to Rashee Rice. And then when the other guys got their opportunities, they cashed in on them.
Yeah.
And they played so decisively after being so inconsistent throughout the year. When it came to nut-cutting time, it's like, here we go. And they did that all the way through the playoffs and all the way through the Super Bowl. So, for me, it was Andy Reid's best coaching job, and he's had a lot of good ones. I thought it was so impressive to be able to play at that level in the critical moments of the year like they did. So it starts with them, right? Because of the coach, because of the quarterback, because of the young defense. And then everything else, you got to prove it to me that you can knock the big boys off. And we'll see if that can happen. Let's
come full circle. You said when you grew up in Jersey, you had a Joe Namath poster on your wall?
I did. It's from A Matter of Style. Do you remember his book?
Yes, I do.
And it's an amazing book. And it was this thing that you pulled out and this great throwing sequence. And I was like, Namath was incredible. And, he could throw it as well as anybody in the history of football. And but it's interesting. I told my mom this morning that I was coming up. My mom's 88. My dad was a coach and a scout forever, and so she's grown up with football. And I told her I was coming up here and I was going to interview Aaron Rodgers and talk about this project, about how the game has evolved and how Joe Namath threw it 50 years ago and now how Aaron Rodgers throws it. And my mom kind of cut me off. She said, Jason, the game has changed.
Yeah.
It's different. It was much slower back then. Now it's wide open and fast, and these athletes are incredible. And I'm like, you might be right. So maybe a lot of the evolution of the throwing is a result of the evolution of the game. There weren't bubble screens back then.
No.
Right?
No.
It was drop back.
He was throwing the ball down the
chucking
field.
It down the field. We found a clip of Namath on NFL films taking an 11-step drop.
Really?
He was 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage and rifling it down the field.
That's funny because everybody looks at Namath's numbers now and looks at completion percentage or touchdowns and interceptions.
Just a different
Just
game.
a completely different game. You got to throw that stuff out.
Completely different game. I mean, all the passer ratings for those guys playing 30, 40, 50 years ago, they're so low, relatively speaking, because the game was throw the ball down the field. They didn't complete as high a percentage of passes. They threw more interceptions. It just was what the game was all about back then. But I thought it was interesting that my mom made that observation.
I think that's very cool at 88 years old. So succinct. So Rodgers, with this organization specifically, Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. Haven't won the Super Bowl since January 1969. How much do you think that he embraces the role of, I got an opportunity here. I'm already cemented in history, but I have an opportunity here to do something that just hasn't been done before.
Yeah, I think those are all motivating factors for guys, and I think it's important to visualize those goals, have that vision for yourself, and cement that vision in your mind. But then I think it's important to put that in the recesses of your mind and get to work today.
Yeah.
What do we got to do today? What do we got to do to make Tuesday, August 13th, the best practice we've ever had? And then we watch it afterwards, and we come back tomorrow and make Wednesday better. And go down to Carolina this weekend and have great practices with them, and then go play well in the preseason. So for me, it's all about a day-by-day process. It's a play-by-play process. And I think that's what the best ones are able to do. They keep their focus narrow. And I think that's a big challenge for the Jets this year.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of noise around this franchise. And I think it's important for them to block it out, embrace what they have. They got a lot of really good players on this team. It's a well-coached team. They practice the right way. They go about things the right way. Stay focused on that stuff, and then go play on Sundays and have fun playing ball and embrace those opportunities, and we'll count them up at the end. But if you get yourself too enamored with, I'm gonna change history, or I'm gonna prove them wrong, you probably won't play your best ball.
But the thing that he always talks about is being intentional with everything at practice.
No question.
And you've talked to him so many times over the years. That's one thing that always stands out, is that he lives in that moment.
That's it. Right here, right now. The best ones are able to do that.
Well, we are going to be watching your special on NFL Films. We'll be watching Sunday Night Football as well, and the Jets are going to be on there a few times here this season, and also Notre Dame as well.
Let's watch some Notre Dame. Fighting Irish, baby.
Saturday afternoons. Jason, thank you so much. Great to have a New Jersey native here in the studio.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Do a great job.
Thanks.